something seems a little off. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Skeptic, and welcome back to my series on Summerween. Where I take a look at the classic horror films that spawned a franchise, begging the question, are they still scary? But if you all don't mind, I'm going to take a change of location because this place is a little moist. Yep, blinding lights in my eyes? Much better. So tonight's visual feast of fear brings us back yet again to the 80s, which was a good era for slashers. But just because a slasher has gore doesn't mean it can't be creative. In Nightmare on Elm Street, we have a ghost that murders children in their sleep. Sounds like a good pitch to me. I mean, when do you feel most vulnerable? Maybe when you're out swimming in the ocean, or being stalked in your own home? How about while you're asleep, defenseless? Even before seeing the movie years ago, I remember as a kid having seen many parodies of the movie, including that one episode of The Simpsons. Just the concept alone is terrifying. But does it still hold up today? Well, let's dive in, Inception style. Our opening credits show us a small window revealing our antagonist crafting his weapon of choice, a glove with knife fingers. A unique selection, to say the least. This establishes our monster character right off the bat, unlike previous horror films. And that's a kick-ass title design. Classic horror Nightmare
on Elm Street.
We meet our first poor sap, Tina, as she appears in a room of bright light, already as of crossing the boundaries of reality and then into a dark hallway where we get a jump scare sheep. She enters our monster's lair, a labyrinth of pipes steaming, dripping, red light emitting. She walks this dubious journey all while in her nightie, which is a nice touch considering we discover this is all about dreams. And that music. Classic 80s synth, now considered cheap but effective. And she's followed by what sounds like an off-key children's nursery rhyme, which implies all kinds of wrong. And I love it! And the sound of a baby crying doesn't help either. With everything set and built up and appropriately in front of a raging fiery boiler, we finally get our proper jump scare. Beautiful. Tina jolts awake and grabs her cross, which is presented with careful lighting. She clutches onto it as if saying even powerful symbols aren't enough to help. Then we see a vision of little girls playing jump rope, chanting a song about Freddy coming to get you. So who are they? What's their story? They're never properly explored, but we'll talk about them later, don't you worry. The next morning, Tina meets up with the rest of our cast of high school hooligans, the good girl Nancy, who has the same mouth as Kristen Stewart, Leather Jacket, because stereotype cool kid, and a young Johnny Depp who's looking oh so adorable in his little sweater vest before he grows up to be ugh. Tina conveys her disturbing nightmares as of late, which Nancy implies that she's also been having.
Maybe we're gonna have a big earthquake. They say things get really weird just before.
Do they? Well, I imagine this is shot in California, where earthquakes would occur, but that makes it unrelatable to the rest of the country. They could easily just set a full moon and still keep it within the horror theme, and full moons are more universally understood, though this kind of adds to the explanation as to why Californians can't seem to dress their characters appropriately for the seasons. A jacket in the middle of summer? Hell no! As the gang sits around a very 80s looking boombox, they make with the humor by showing off playback technology. Oh, those rapscallions. There's a noise outside, which Johnny checks out only to be met with dumb boy leather jacket guy. Oh, the juvenile prankster. He's harmless. Holy shit! What's with the escalation? Just can't take a joke? Is that it? Tina and leather jacket go off to have sex because teens in a horror flick. Johnny wants some too, but Nancy says they can't because they're here to support their friend who's having a hard time. Excuses.
Morality sucks.
That quote is going to be funny later. After some passionate and youthful lovemaking, we see the cross fall from the wall. Uh-oh! And this famous special effect happens. After all these years, that still looks way better than the remake. Someone throws a rock outside her window and calls Tina's name. Ah, just like a teenager would. She follows it outside where it is very blue. You know Freddy's coming, especially when you see his shadow coming out like the Ninja Turtles. And here he is.
Please, God.
This is God.
Yeah, I didn't know Arnold Schwarzenegger's one-liners made it into the movie. Freddy does several creepy acts, including stretching his arms, showing how sharp his glove is, teleports, chops his own fingers off, gross, and even lets his face be pulled off. All of this builds up to a delectable scare session before the final kill, which we see from the other side of the dream reality. Tina screams as she's slashed to ribbons, being dragged along the room like she's in the goddamn Exorcist. Poor Leather Jacket watches in horror, confused out of his mind. Before Nancy and Johnny appear on the scene, Leatherjacket is already gone chasing the would-be killer. The police show up to describe how the crime scene doesn't make much sense, which also introduces us to Nancy's dad, Papa Cop Don, played by movie star John Saxon, who is wearing mascara? Which I noticed many of these classic horror films utilize veteran actors. The police blame old Leatherjacket because he's such a bad dude, why not? Nancy goes to school despite the overwhelming trauma, and flawlessly we see her enter a dream where Tina calls her while wearing a bloody body bag. She follows the trail of blood, and I still love how unsettling this shot is. She bumps into a hall monitor, who is clearly Freddy getting his yucks out. Yuck, yuck, yuck. The trail leads her to the basement, where we see ye old familiar boiler room where the wall disappears behind her. And what do you think is gonna happen?
Come to Freddy.
No shit. But the scent flicker synced to Freddy's tongue is an unexpected bonus. Nancy cleverly burns herself to wake up and scares the crap out of the classroom.
You'll need a hall pass.
Really?
She notices that she retained the burn mark from her dream. She goes to see Leatherjacket, who insists he didn't kill Tina, and what kind of police station are they running that they thought it was appropriate for her to see the would-be killer? After a doozy of a day, Nancy takes a bath singing the song those little girls were singing, meaning the vision must have been seen by all the characters then? Of course, a nice soothing bath means a little nap, which leads us to this famous shot. And the next shot is an awesome underwater sequence which feels like the inspiration for that scene in Get Out, but not as perfected. Her mom wakes her up and later insists she needs her sleep to recover from her trauma. Nancy, however, feels sleeping has become a hazard, so she takes her stay awake pill. Kinda like my don't sound bad medication, which I need, or I sound like...
And that's show business.
She stays up watching Evil Dead, very appropriate, until Johnny comes over, who she asks him to stand guard while she sleeps and to wake her if she appears to be having a nightmare.
Okay.
Really, dude? After a murder?
What'd you do to your arm?
I burned it in English class.
About the right reaction.
God, I look 20 years old.
Oh, boo-hoo. She enters her dreams and walks over to the jail where she sees Leatherjacket, who Freddy is about to assault. So is she in some kind of dream nexus where all of people's dreams connect? Kind of like Mementos and Persona 5, if I were to get a little esoteric there? Anyway, Tina's grotesque appearance spooks her back to her house, where the stairs melt and Freddy attacks her with a mask of her mother. Thankfully, the alarm goes off and Nancy finds Glenn was asleep. Uh-oh, Johnny's in trouble. They go to the prison to check on their friend Leatherjacket, afraid he's about to die, and well, let's just say she's not wrong. At his funeral, we pass by the Iron Man grave. Love you 3000. Nancy finally tells her folks about her nightmares describing the man with the knife fingers and a red and green sweater, to which the slow zoom on their faces implies they know something about what she's talking about. Which leads us to the most irritating part of the film, the parents' denial to the real danger. Despite an overabundance of evidence now and later, and despite the logic of Nancy shouldn't be able to know a man that she's never met before, but that her parents have, still, they come to the conclusion that Nancy just needs to have some sleep.
You'll feel better when you get some sleep.
Feel better? You call this feeling better?
Okay, so I understand skepticism, but this movie implies that 80s families were just too pure and too innocent to handle any mounting circumstances, and that might be true. But it still goes out of its way to establish the mom is just being outright insane. And so they take her to a sleep research institution where they can't understand her REM level readings, and she proves she can pull items out of her dreams like Freddy's hat. This is interesting because Wes Craven actually researched sleep science in order to write the story, so to include the scientific portion in the film is actually pretty legit. Nancy's mom tries to convince her that the man she's talking about can't hurt her because he died years ago. Fred Krueger was a child killer who got his freedom from the court, so she and other parents burnt his home down with him along with it. And she kept his glove for some reason.
He's dead, honey, because Mommy killed him.
That's actually pretty metal.
Fred Krueger can't come after you, Nancy. He's dead.
You knew about him all this time? And you've been acting like it was something I made up?
Fair point. The logic isn't adding up, but forget about it. It must be the teen who's crazy, and let me emphasize the point by putting some bars on the windows.
Oh, gross.
But Johnny has an idea.
What if they meet a monster in their dreams? Then what?
They turn their back on it, take away its energy, and it disappears.
So kinda like the Boogeyman, or the Force, or the book version of Pennywise. In the meantime, Nancy is going on 7 days of no sleep with the help of her secret coffee. How is her mother not smelling that? Maybe because she's busy with mommy's secret booze. Also doesn't help that any contact with her boyfriend Johnny is blocked by bars on the window and a big bloated man drinking beer judging the world from his porch.
I don't want that kid hanging around with our son anymore.
This leads us to a kinda confusing scene where she hears scraping noise in a phone call. But nowhere is it established that she's fallen asleep. Or is it that she's so sleep deprived that she's going in and out of consciousness? Kinda like what they try to show us in that scene in the remake. But that was dumb. Either way, she knows this means Johnny's in trouble. Well, he seems fine falling asleep to TV and radio, barely affected by the death of his friends, and then... This death scene is so over the top and out of nowhere, it's brilliant. The fun fact here is they had to design this room upside down in order to do this shot, which shows the level of creativity. It does beg the question what Freddy actually did to Johnny off screen in the dream world. Was it some kind of blender? Dream blender? Kind of like what they had in the Simpsons episode? I got 2 for 2 references now. Nancy decides enough is enough and takes matters into her own hands. As the police are mopping up Johnny, she tells her dad to come to her in 20 minutes because she'll have the killer. Her dad isn't really listening though, but she goes ahead with a plan to set up booby traps around the house, which somehow she accomplished in less than 10 minutes and on very little sleep. Most impressive. And hey, is that where Home Alone got the inspiration? You're a thief, Culkin. A little prayer couldn't hurt, and then she dissolves into a dream. Not as clever as the previous edits, but nonetheless. She enters Freddy's lair again and finds all kinds of collectible knickknacks, including Tina's crucifix and Johnny's headset. When Freddy finally attacks, Nancy jumps from the boiler room back to her house and gets into a struggle with him. Her buzzer goes off, but did it work? Booyah! I am so questioning those physics. This leads us to a sequence of kinda slapstick action as Freddy gets his ass handed to him one trap after another, ending with a classic fire scene. The fire marshals on set must have had a field day with that one. Nancy calls her dad over, they follow the fiery footsteps, that's pretty cool, and find Freddy on top of her mother. This gives us a Hellraiser-style effect, but her mom's corpse descends into, Dimension X. Her dad walks away with an existential crisis, but Freddy's not done. But remember Johnny's words. Nancy somehow takes away Freddy's power by revoking her fear and belief in him.
I take back every bit of energy I gave you.
No, I've been conquered by the power of love!
So Wes Craven actually wanted to end the movie on a more happy and triumphant note, but the studio didn't like it and wanted to give the potential for a sequel. So they ended with this. Nancy walks out of her home on a lovely foggy sunny day, her mom is alright, her friends are well, driving in a sick red ride, for the 80s, but the door locks, a green and red striped sunroof covers them, and the car takes control, driving them off to who knows where. The mom waves blissfully, denying anything wrong yet again, ending with Freddy's hand yanking her body through the door window. Damn! And I mean literally, I think our characters are fated for damnation. But I do think the film actually ended appropriately on an ambiguous dreamlike scene. So is the film still scary after all these years? Well, considering the concept alone is terrifying, and that a lot of the kills are both brutal and creative, I think the movie's actually aged surprisingly well. Yeah, at least more so than its successors. So out of all the films that I reviewed for Summerween, I feel like this is your best option for a blood-pumping, chair-grabbing, lip-biting good time. Certainly stirs me to this day. But let's see those scary bits on a deeper level. Being caught asleep and unable to defend yourself is already a nerve-wracking idea, especially if you're in a dangerous situation like, a battlefield or something. But now the killer can get inside of your mind, so it doesn't matter where you are. The central concept is enough to make this horror experience. Next thing you know, there'll be a film about being on the John. Oh, shit! You take one look at this guy and you think, oh yeah, that's one creepy mother hugger. But what actually makes him scary is not the obvious stuff, but the inspiration behind him. Did you know Freddy's red and green colors were based on the fact that they are the most clashing colors to the human retina? Or that his hat was based on a real guy who wore the same hat and scared Wes Craven as a kid? Some kind of raving drunk? And the name Fred Krueger was inspired directly from a kid that bullied Wes Craven in his childhood. The claws were added as a primal fear in nature to anything sharp, like a psychological reaction to a predator's teeth. Craven wanted to tackle fears that he found universal. Oh, and Freddy collects trophies from the kids he kills, like the crucifix, which doesn't work, by the way. Stupid little girl rhyme lying to us. What's scarier than a killer who can overpower you? One who can control space and reality around you. The man can disguise himself, dismember himself, transform objects, appear anytime, anywhere, etc. There is no end to his range of abilities. In a dream, anything can happen. Some choice example scenes are his finger and body cuts, his unnatural long limbs, his mom mask, his tearaway face, teleporting anywhere, appearing from behind a tree, and transforming the environment around him. Wes Craven had said, "I wanted to do something that was tied to the deepest recesses of our subconscious. I had a history in academics, so I knew there were certain things that were universal." An academic with a master's from Johns Hopkins University, Craven decided there is no greater time of psychological peace in human existence than during sleep. The concept of A Nightmare on Elm Street was inspired by a real medical mystery referred to as Asian Death Syndrome, or the less offensive, Brugada Syndrome. Specific accounts were among refugees in 1970s America who escaped the killing fields in Cambodia. These otherwise healthy young men were dying in their sleep, and many reported bad dreams prior to their deaths. The greatest point here is that little research can show science and reality are plenty terrifying without fantasy. This image is set up with a flawless transition from reality to dream, maintaining the classroom only with the students unnaturally staring forward and the student in front whispering his citations while staring at Nancy. Curiosity builds the tension in this scene, as we step out into the hallway with Nancy to find Tina's body dragged away by an unseen force, leaving a bloody trail to follow. Nothing like a blood trail to spell doom in any situation. Even when Tina returns in another dream, she appears like an omen to Nancy, pointing the way for her in all her gory detail. Tina's corpse makes for not only a disturbing image, but a clear warning sign with her presence. A recurring scare you might see me mention, especially when exploring J-horror, is little girls are creepy. Why? It's the facade of innocence. The idea that great horror could hide in the least threatening vessel. And these little girls, real or not, spell out the danger for our characters as playfully and casually. The rhyming adds a creep factor as well. Theoretically, they could be illusions imitating Freddy's past victims, which is already an unsettling thought. We even hear baby cries near the beginning of the film, also implying he murdered infants. Or they could be mere illusions that he fabricated. Either way, they are a perfect symbol associated with Freddy's near arrival and our character's doom. I'll repeat. Unexpected, over the top, messy. You can tell great care went into the shot considering they had to shoot the whole room upside down, which was a similar effect for Tina's death scene. Just rearranging room decor and filming upside down gives a perfect illusion of crazy physics. You know, recent horror movies like Midsommar got a lot of credit for taking place during the day. While it's true that it's rare in films, sequences like this don't need to be kept in the dark either. A sunny day with smiles deceives us into a lull of relief, similar to Friday the 13th. But that fog effect and even the sound quality change implies a dream. We have a sunroof that moves on its own, colored like the monster. The doors lock, the car drives itself, our characters look concerned and panic, and then we end with a jump scare with surreal motion. Even if the mom's body looks kinda fake. It's a steady build of suspense and it dissolves the happy ending illusion. On top of that, what does this mean? The ambiguity surprisingly plays the story as much more frightening. But my theory is that we see in the third film how Freddy collects souls of his victims, meaning perhaps that's what he's done to these characters as well. Meaning he's trapped them in his limbo forever at his whim to torture. And that was A Nightmare on Elm Street. It was a solid movie to end on. So thanks guys for watching my Summerween special, but next time we're gonna take a look at... Wow, what a crazy dream. I mean, what a nightmare, but you know, at least this whole Summerween thing is all over with. What? Oh, shit. Hey guys, I just wanted to say thanks so much for watching my Summerween special. I'm gonna take a short break before I work on the next big videos, but in the meantime, thanks so much, take care, and pleasant dreams.